Let's have a conversation.
I want to take this time to thank everybody for their support of myself, Mark, and the music and mental health movement. Please take this time to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get notified of when I drop some more great content. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I told y'all I'm going to be hitting everyone with the topics because I have an unlimited amount of things to speak about. I could never run out of things to speak about. And it's funny because I've been speaking about these same things for a number of years to a very small audience. And I used to feel like I'm wasting my time here by speaking about all these different topics that nobody's really listening to. But now here I am with several years worth of material that a lot of people have not heard. So it wasn't a waste. It was just practice. I could just recall all these things and I could tell the same story over again. And it's brand new to you. Good morning, Sheena. When I was growing up, there was a store nearby our house that was called New to You, which was a what's it called? Consignment store, which had lightly used materials and items that you could bring in there for them to sell for you. And it was called New to You because if it was never yours, it's brand new. So if you've never heard it, it's brand new. And even if you have heard it, I don't write down my materials because I like to make them personal, and which is a change from how I used to be. I used to write it down, type it out, read it word for word, but people were more interested in the storytelling aspect of what I do. So anyways, they say that for a lot of people, they fear public speaking more than death. Believe it or not. Look up the statistics. For a lot of people, they fear public speaking, standing in front of a group, whether a small one or a large one, and they fear that more than they fear dying. And I was somebody who used to get a terrible performance anxiety whenever I would stand up in front of a crowd. And it started in school. Before I even knew what anxiety was, this is when I first started experiencing it. When I had to make a presentation in front of the class, my heart would start beating out of my chest. My palms would start sweating. If I had a paper in my hand where I had typed out everything I was going to say in the speech, it would be shaking. If I had note cards, I'd be fumbling around with the note cards. I looked down at the note cards and they were essentially useless because the words were getting blurry on the note card. I used to fear from the beginning of the class when we would get the syllabus, every presentation day, I would feel sick to my stomach. I would feel nauseous. I would feel anxious, even just knowing, oh, week 12, we have to make a presentation. And because of that, my presentation grades always suffered. My presentation grades were always significantly lower than my test grades and my assignment grades because of how scared I was to present. As a matter of fact, I remember this one presentation in one of my classes. I had all the material. I practiced in the mirror. I had the length of time it was supposed to be. It was all good. And when I got up there, I only went through about 1/3 of the material and then ran to my seat. So how did I get over that fear? I was in this class when I was in college called communications. I think communications was an elective in my business classes. And I figured communications would be one of the easier ones. So that's the main reason that I took the class. Something that I didn't know was that class would at least do a lot to alleviate this intense fear that I had of standing in front of the class. And this is how. The teacher at the beginning of the class announced that when we do our presentations, they are going to be recorded. So she had a video camera in the back of the class. And every time we did our presentation, it would get recorded by the video camera, which was a nightmare for me also. Give someone who already has a deathly fear of public speaking, tell them that they have a camera recording them, and that's another layer to that. So she said, this is how it's going to go. The recording of your presentation is going to go on a videotape, and it's going to go to the library, where your grade is going to be split into different percentages. It's going to be a self-evaluation where you give yourself a grade. It's going to be a class evaluation where the class evaluates you. And there's going to be my portion. So I think it was something like the teacher's grade that they give you is worth 50% of what grade you get for that. Your fellow students are 25% and you're 25%. That's how it's weighted. So everybody's input mattered. So I remember I gave my first presentation and it went how all my presentations go. Shaking, sweating, stuttering, nervous, not making eye contact. But even though I kind of knew everything that I was doing, fidgeting, all that, it's different between knowing that and seeing it. Seeing it can be horrifying. So I went to the library, I got the tape. They had a media room where you can put in the tape and you can take the video and watch yourself on the video. And I was mortified watching myself tilt from side to side, watching the paper shake in my hand, looking at me reading off of the paper and not looking at anybody in the face. And I was like, this is terrible. This is how I look and this is how I sound. These are my mannerisms when I speak. I don't ever want to stand in front of the class again. But then I was like, I have to finish this class and I'm going to have to stand in front of the class at least 2 times a month because she scheduled us for 2 presentations every single month. So I'm like, the only way out is through. Hey, Lisa. The only way out is through. So I had to figure out, how do I get better at this? And this is something that I have had to say many times in many different avenues, where instead of running from it, I had to say, how do I get better? So I really tapped into the class. I spoke to the teacher about it. And I paid attention to all the things that we learned in the books. And I even went online and looked up some different tricks. There was a couple of them in particular that I remember. They said icebreakers. When you're nervous and you get up in front of a group, it was even suggested that you could say, hey, I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to get through this, or whatever you're going to say. Or another suggestion was to come up with a joke to start things off, or something thought-provoking. So my thing was to come up with a joke. So for my next presentation, that's what I was going to do. And then there was another suggestion of focusing on a point in the audience that is a little bit above the eyes of somebody in the audience. So you're not actually looking right at them, but it gives the illusion like you're looking at them, which makes it more personal. There was another one that was, don't write out your whole presentation to read to the group, because you're not making a speech, you're making a presentation. So just have really solid notes and bullet points so that you don't have to hold a bunch of papers, have your hand shake. So I would say I'm a pretty fast learner, because presentation 1, I think they gave me a B- or something like that. I gave myself a C because I'm harder on myself than others are hard on me. So I got like a B- for the first presentation, and the feedback was all the things that I'm saying. No eye contact, wasn't engaging enough, read off of the paper, fidgeting, that kind of thing. So the second time I presented, I brought note cards. I brought bullet points. So I was just going to have a good bullet point prompt. And then I was going to be able to kind of essentially freestyle from there. So I started off, I gave them the joke at the beginning of the presentation, and everybody laughed, and I laughed, and it calmed me down significantly, just knowing that I had the audience at least at that point in time. And then I started going into the presentation, and I went off the bullet points. I used personal stories, just like how I do here and everywhere else. Now, for the sake of engagement, I use personal, relatable stories, and I looked at everybody. And sometimes I ask questions. Can anybody relate? Has anyone experienced that before? And having the audience engaged was something that really changed the game for me and made me realize you can write the best speech in the world, but if you cannot connect with your audience, then the best speech in the world means absolutely nothing. Good for you for even wanting to improve. This is like, Lisa, this is like, honestly, to me, it felt like a mother throwing their baby in the water. So I wouldn't even call it wanting to improve. It was more like I felt like I was drowning when I got thrown in the middle of the pool, and I had to start moving my legs and arms because I never wanted to look like that on that camera ever again. So the second presentation, I felt so much better about it because I only used the note cards. It wasn't perfect, but the main things that I was focused on was the connection with the audience and figuring out a way to minimize the nerves. So the opening intro of telling that joke that made people laugh, following it with some kind of thought-provoking question. Then I was able to go into my points. I started off looking at that point above everyone in the audience. And then eventually I started making eye contact as people were verbally responsive to certain things that I said. I'm looking and I'm pointing like, oh, have you experienced that before? And next thing you know, I got through the presentation, which in terms of the nonverbal stuff was probably the best presentation I had ever given at that time. Now, did that cure the performance anxiety that I had public speaking? Not right away, but you continually do something, you keep practicing at it, you sharpen your skills, and little by little, you lose some of that nervousness and you lose some of that nervous energy. And that's what was happening for me. And the other thing is your preparation. Your preparation can really, really help. Not just your preparation in terms of making the paper, because that's the only thing I was ever focused on. Preparation to me was make sure that you have the paper and make sure that it goes the amount of minutes that it's supposed to go. Preparation can also be knowing your audience. And in this kind of scenario, it's kind of a life hack because you know your audience beforehand. It's the same people in your class. It's the people you're friends with. It's the people you talk to in class every day. So you get to kind of know the audience and what works and what doesn't work. There are scenarios where you obviously don't know the audience, but you can still use the same principles, whether the crowd is 10 people or 1,000 people. Just to let y'all know, this is a more generic explanation, but it's something that I am willing to go in more depth about, even use PowerPoint and do these how I used to do them. But for now, this is just a really generic one because I came up with it this morning. So now, I wouldn't say that I have zero fear of doing a presentation, but I will say that I've presented many more times since then, many times since I graduated from school. I've held conferences by myself, and most people can't really tell the nervousness that I feel, and it's less than it was before. The more you do something that you're nervous about is the less that you fear it. The more you face something is the less that you fear it. Obviously, that depends on what it is. Like, there's some phobias that people are just not going to face, but that's the general formula. That's the general blueprint. And ironically, it's the same thing with agoraphobia that I had and exposure therapy that I did to get rid of it or significantly minimize it. So that's how I got over my fear of public speaking. Number one was to see myself on that video and to see the areas where I was flawed with the speaking. Number two was to focus more on the engagement with the audience versus just the material. Number three was not to type out the whole speech and hold the speech in my hand while I'm speaking, and instead put it on note cards with really good bullet points. Number four, instead of looking people directly in the eyes at first, I was focusing on a point on the wall or the door or something that was just above, like an inch above somebody's head in the back, which makes it look like you're making the eye contact. Number six was the opener, making sure that the opener was something that caught the audience's attention right away, which in my case was a joke, which is a format that I have used in many, many, many presentations since then. And number seven was just going for it, just being willing to do something that you are very fearful of until the fear dissipates. Doing these lives on the internet, strangely, was also a fear of mine when I started. And I also kind of started the same way, where I took a tremendous amount of notes and just read them. And now I'm at a point where I focus on my strengths, and I've done it so much that I don't feel that same fear. Once in a while, I still feel some kind of fear, but it's not significant enough that it makes me want to turn off the computer and run 1,000,000 miles a minute. So that's my short story on how I got over my fear of public speaking. Let me know in the comment section if you have a fear of public speaking, if this has helped you in any way. And if you have any questions for me, also put them in the comments, and I will respond to everyone that I can. And I hope everyone has a great day, and we will talk again soon.
I want to take this time to thank everybody for their support of myself, Mark, and the music and mental health movement. Please take this time to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get notified of when I drop some more great content. Thank you.